Welcome to Second Unitarian Church. I love the way you just always answer like that. I'm Sue Burke, a member of the church's Board of Trustees, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. Today we're continuing to meet virtually using Zoom as well as in person, and at the Admiral, and here at the Second 2U Sanctuary. We ask everyone's indulgence for the complications of a three-part service. We're glad you're here regardless of your mode of attending. In Zoom, you'll notice a chat feed available where you can say hello, interact, and share your joys and concerns when we reach that time of the service. You can also use Zoom closed captioning through the live transcript option. When we would traditionally sing together and read things in unison, you're encouraged to do so as well, even though you are masked or on mute. Our voices echo through the world, so we will hear each other if we listen closely and sing with our full spirit. We're paying close attention to COVID recommendations, and this could mean changes at any time. But for now, we recognize that maintaining physical distance, even while masked, is an act of love and protection. The most recent information is on the Second Unitarian website. We especially welcome newcomers and visitors this morning. Finding a new community and making new connections can be challenging. Please know that we're excited to have you and look forward to getting to know you. If you're new to us today, you're welcome to note that in the Zoom chat or mention it in person after the service. If you are new, please feel free to fill out one of the yellow cards on the welcome table with your contact information and receive our twice-monthly newsletters. You can also note if you'd like to have a name tag made for you. For those of you worshiping in the sanctuary to you, we're currently not passing the collection plate, but if you'd like to make a donation in person, you can place it in the white box on the wall just outside of the sanctuary doors before or after the service. There's envelopes on the welcome table if you'd like to use one. You may also, like our Zoom participants, text your donation to Second Unitarian. The information is in your order of service. Our worship today is led by Mandy Huizinga. Our time together requires a large group of people who make possible the worship, the music, and the technical production. They're listed in the order of service, and we thank them for their ongoing service to our congregation. You can find more information and lots of important announcements in your order of service. Check out what's happening next week here. I now welcome John Howe to lead our call to worship.
Good morning. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation, a community of children, youth, and adults, a people of many beliefs and traditions, bound not by the specific list of things we believe, but the values we share. Whether you are joining us for the first time or for the 1000th time, you are welcome here. Whether you believe in God some of the time, all of the time, or none of the time, you are welcome here. Whatever your race, whomever you love, whichever way you move in the world, however much money might be in your pocket, you are welcome here. I invite you, as you feel ready, to take a breath in and out. As the music begins, let us enter into our service together.
Thank you, choir. That was beautiful. In just a moment, Ben in the sanctuary and Harris at the Admiral will light our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. Our chalice lighting words this morning are from the Reverend Jennifer Grayson. They are entitled Embrace the Night. Universal mystery, guide us away from the desire to shine light in all the corners. Teach us to embrace the night, for without the darkness, we can never see the stars. Ben and Harris, would you please light our chalice?
Number 49, Stillness Reigns. Stillness reigns, the winds are sleeping, all the world is bent on keeping tryst with night, whose wings are sweeping from the west, each ray of light. Dusk a soft and silken cover over all is seen to hover in its readiness to cover all the drowsy world. Good night. Those who labored long untiring, hail this time of rest, desiring strength renewed through sweet retiring. Welcome thoughts of peaceful night. And through spaces real or seeming, find the Eden of their dreaming. Soar to starry ways, redeeming hours of toil and pain. Good night.
Please join me in reciting our words of covenant. The words will be in your order of service or on your screen. We covenant to build a community that challenges us to grow and empowers us to honor the truth within ourselves. We will be generous with our gifts and honest in our communication, holding faithful to a love that embraces both diversity and conflict. Called by our living tradition, we will nurture spirituality within a vision of the eternal, living out our inner convictions through struggles for justice and acts of compassion. Please join Miranda in singing our congregational hymn, Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart
If you are the type of person who likes to come up for a story, I'd love to invite you forward. You can be any age. You don't need to be just a child. Now, this story has special parts to it. So, we need some glow sticks for this story. Yes, you're welcome. Some glow sticks. You want a few more? And if you're at home on Zoom, when it comes time to use the glow sticks, you can use your hands. So this is a fun and kind of silly story. I'm going to sit up another level. Here we go. It's called The King Who Banned the Dark. All right. There once was a little boy who was afraid of the dark. There's nothing so unusual about that. Most children are afraid of the dark at one time or another. But this little boy was a prince, and he decided that when he became king, he would do something about the dark. He would ban it. On the first morning of his reign, the king told his advisors about his plan. "With the greatest respect, Your Majesty, if you ban the dark just like that, the people won't understand. They'll revolt against you. But if you make them think it's their idea, it might just work." And so the advisors started to spread rumors about the dark. The dark is scary. The dark is boring. You can't play in the dark. Read all about it. The dark is stealing your money. The dark is taking your toys and candy. The people had never really worried about the dark before, but all of a sudden it seemed like a really bad idea. So they marched to the palace and demanded a ban on the dark. "Very well," said the king. "From now on, the dark will be banished from this land." And because everyone had got what they thought they wanted, everyone thought they were happy. To make sure that it would never be dark again, an enormous artificial sun was installed above the palace. Left a bit, right a bit. Even when the real sun set, the artificial sun kept shining all day and all night. It glowed in the sky. Curtains were taken down, anti-dark hats were issued, lamps shone from every window 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The people stayed up all night celebrating, which was easy because it never got dark. But soon, the people were tired of celebrating. In fact, they were just tired. With the lights on all the time, no one could sleep at all, and with no real nighttime, the days dragged on forever. The people had made a mistake. They realized pretty quickly they needed the dark back. But if anyone tried to switch their lights off, the light inspectors would come and make them pay a fine. To get the people excited about the dark ban again, the advisors decided to hold a big party. Celebration of the dark ban with fireworks, the brightest thing of all time. But the people weren't as silly as the king's advisors thought they were. Whisper by whisper, they hatched their own plan. On the night of the great celebration, the king stood on the rooftop to watch the fireworks. But the sky was so bright that when the first firework went off, nothing could be seen at all. The king sighed. Meanwhile, everywhere else in the kingdom, a house switched off its lights. The light inspectors knocked on the door. At that moment, the lights in the next house went off, and the lights in the next house next to that one, and the house next to that, and the same thing happening all over the street on every house. And the sky began to dim. The light inspectors began to panic and call for backup. All the guards at the palace rushed to help them, and that's when the palace, unguarded, a small group of people climbed up the wall and switched off the very last switch, the artificial sun. The sky went dark. The king shuddered. "We must turn the sun back on, Your Majesty," shouted the advisors. "We must crush the uprising. We must punish the people." "Shh," said the king. "Look, your glow sticks." Instead of punishing anyone, the king lifted the ban on the dark. Oops, skipped a page. The lights had gone out just in time for the grand finale. Yes, look at all those beautiful lights. You can only see them when it's dark out, right? You can't see them in the daytime. Yes, look at those colors. Instead of punishing the people, the king lifted the ban on the dark, and now every year on the same night, the people set off fireworks in the darkness to remind themselves of what they almost lost. The king is still a little scared of the dark sometimes, but he sleeps with a nightlight these days. If only he'd done that in the first place, the whole mess could have been avoided. What would happen if it was light out all the time? Would we be able to sleep? No. Do you think it would affect other things besides just people? Yeah. Like, do you think bats? Yes. They could not be awake. They would sleep forever. Yes. I think the dark can be important even if it is scary sometimes, right? Well, I want you to take your glow sticks home, and if they're still going tonight, I hope they are. You can remember that tonight, that even though the dark can be scary, we need to be able to sleep and we need the dark. Okay? Wonderful. Please join me in singing the children out hymn number 413.
Each year, we all make a commitment, a pledge, to support the ministry of our church. In addition to this contribution, each Sunday we take up a collection so that we can share with those doing justice beyond our church community. While some are able to come together in person, you can still share your resources. To make your contribution, you can send a text and follow prompts that will be on the screen. We will have the number on the screen as the music plays for the offertory. For this month, March, we are sharing our plate with Bethany House. This morning, we will hear a few words from Sister Kathleen Mulcahy about Bethany House.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to join you. Bethany House is a house of hospitality, a home where young women who are seeking asylum, many along with their children, can come and stay and have the support services that they need as they are working their way through the asylum process. We began in 2017, and since that time we have served 64 women and 12 children from 17 different countries. And at the moment now we have 11 women and a 3-month-old baby. We're expecting 2 more women this coming week. We offer them an opportunity to get an education, to get the legal assistance that they need. We put them in touch with resources, medical care. It's really an alternative to adult immigration detention. Most of the women that come to us are coming when they turn 18 on their birthday. They have come to the United States as unaccompanied children, and when they arrive, they are transferred to the children's centers, detention centers that we hear too much about in our news. But when they turn 18, they would be moved either to family or adult detention. And those that don't have family, we're one of the alternatives. And so women can stay with us as long as they need to. We kind of become their U.S. family so that they have that alternative. The asylum process can take 3, 4, 5 years, and they don't need to be sitting in a jail cell somewhere. They need to be getting an education, preparing for life, united with their children, And that's the purpose of Bethany House. We have a young woman who has left us to join her husband, but who is from Ukraine. And we were in touch with her the other night just to ask how her family back home is doing. Her mother still lives in their native village on the western edge of Ukraine and has chosen not to leave the country at this time. She's safe at the moment, but it's a moment by moment thing. But that's one way that we establish a sense of family. Well, at the moment, there are women from 7 countries forming one large family, and a couple of us staff members who live in most of the week. They just need that added support so that they can become contributing members of this country. And so we ask your support, and both in prayer and thinking of the women who are trying to become immigrants and citizens, and also all those in their families who are at risk because they have stayed at home in a place where there is much violence. So thank you very much for this opportunity and for your generosity.
Now I invite you to join me in reading our offertory words. They are printed in your order of service and will be on the screen. This church is the community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. As we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm it and enable its participation in the larger world around us. The offering will now be generously given and gratefully received.
Our prayer this morning is in the form of a poem by Wendell Berry entitled "The Peace of Wild Things." When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives might be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars, waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Blessed be. At this time, I will light 2 candles, one representing the joys and celebrations we are experiencing, and another representing the concerns and sorrows we are holding. As we wish to return to our congregational ritual of lighting candles for our joys, concerns, and sorrows, we want to continue to maintain our safety and comfort with each other. In the sanctuary, you are invited to come up and get a candle from the usher, or have the usher light a candle for you. At the end, as you end your time of contemplation and candle lighting, we invite you to use the hand sanitizer available so that we can all be clean and safe together in our sanctuary. For our friends at the Admiral, I invite you to come forward and to take a pebble from one bowl, hold it tightly, putting your energy into the stone, and then knowing your joys and sorrows to be shared by this community. Let it go lightly into the other bowl. For our friends on Zoom, join us by sharing your joys and concerns in our chat window. We hold all of these joys, celebrations, sorrows, and struggles close to our hearts. Amen. Thank you. That song was beautiful. Thank you. We are approaching a milestone anniversary. In just a few days, we will mark the end of year 2 of the pandemic. 2 years. 2 incredibly long, 2 incredibly short years. Like many of you, my family's lives changed 2 years ago. Our family learned to be together in different ways. Looking back on those early days, I didn't know what to expect over the coming days and months. I didn't think it would last this long. I didn't anticipate arguing about vaccines or advocating for the greater good of society. We were living through so very many unknowns. To be honest, our family adjusted fairly quickly to being at home in those first early weeks. We go on long walks together between school breaks, cook meals together, eat more food than we ever anticipated, and generally just enjoyed the slower pace of being at home. And then the winter came. I would still go for walks and take time outdoors, maybe shorter walks. But then in January of 2021, we had a 2-week spell where going for walks was difficult with wind chills in the negatives. Add that to the early nightfall, and I felt the deep heaviness of being so isolated from everyone and everything. I slumped. My physical activities became less and less, and it was harder to get up in the dark morning. This pandemic has been a serious problem for those who struggle with mental illness and those who are now struggling because of isolation. Even for those of us who don't struggle with mental illness, depression and COVID fatigue have hit so many of us in the last 2 years, and we need to take care of ourselves and each other. While I still did and wanted to do all that I needed to at work and at home, I was struggling with the motivation to do something for myself. It was almost like hibernation. I often find myself changing my patterns and habits to adjust to the changing temperatures and seasons of the year. My diet changes based on what's available and what I need. Warm and hearty dishes in the fall and winter, fresh and light meals in the spring and summer. I like the long summer days and short warm nights. After 3 years in Chicago, I'm beginning to like the short winter days and long cold nights. And it never fails. I find myself slowing down every winter. I found myself longing for a moment of rest in a season of cold and dark. This pandemic moment of hibernation I find myself in, however, though seasonal like all the years before, was a bit harder than most years. Whether it's seasonal or not, there are times in our lives when we slow down. We struggle. Sometimes we may even stop. Oftentimes we use imagery of darkness to describe these moments. Moments like losing our job or the collapse of a relationship. Moments of heartbreak over laws that harm our trans siblings, or grief over war. I think this imagery is apt, but it's been used as well in ways that are harmful. In fact, historically, darkness versus light imagery is highly problematic. In an article written by Reverend Hope Johnson, a Black UU elder who has moved on from this life, she writes about the problematic nature of using dark and light, black versus white imagery. She writes of the internalization that can happen when we use this language. She encourages us to take care of using the stereotypes that the images of black and white give us, that dark and black are bad and evil, and white and light are holy and good. Reverend Johnson is correct. These images are harmful and hurtful. So I invite us today, especially in a time when so many of us are struggling to see a hopeful side to life, as we enter year 3 of a pandemic, with the world still in chaos, maybe even adding chaos, to look again at these images of light and dark and to rethink them. I find guidance within Taoism, my own theological leaning, which teaches me that everything is a spectrum. We see this in the image of the Taoist image of the yin and yang. We are always on a path moving from one side to another, with each side containing an element of the other. While light imagery has typically been portrayed as good and right and holy, light also has an element of the opposite. As a migraine sufferer, I can tell you that light is not my friend in the deep moments of pain I experience at the height of a migraine. Darkness and calmness are. The goal for a Taoist is not to work towards one end or the other of this spectrum, but to find balance. We've put so much weight and worth in finding light, emerging from pandemic darkness, that we forget that there are blessings to be found in the dark. Here are some blessings that I've experienced in this pandemic. Spending more time with my children, Zooming with friends far away. I know you all of you can relate to this, wearing pajama bottoms to Zoom meetings. Slowing down from a seriously overbooked schedule. In the larger picture, this pandemic initially reduced the amount of carbon emissions, and we had cleaner air for a time. We've also found new ways to be together, like online worship, which allows us to be more inclusive as a faith movement. We certainly didn't need a pandemic, but I do think we needed a moment to slow down. We were flying so fast through life, we had forgotten what the darkness holds. In her book, Rooted, Life at the Crossroads of Science, Nature, and Spirit, Leonda Lynn Haupt writes about the need for darkness and the gifts that darkness brings. Of the many insights that she shares, I would highly recommend the book. I would like to share 2 that have changed my perspective on the dark. First, Haupt speaks of the need for darkness as that which brings forth life. She writes, "Without absolute darkness, the seed will not germinate. The decomposers and fungi that live under earth will not toil. The transformation of death into new life will cease its spinning." The life in that tiny seed must be in darkness to find its spark. We all know that plants need the sun, but first they need the dark. They need to find themselves buried in the rich, dark humus that feeds new life from that which came before in order to thrive and live. What comes next, either in our pandemic lives or in just a newly blossomed spring, needs to have time to germinate in the rich, bountiful dark that was nourished by what was. Second, as Haupt writes about the need for rest and reflection in the dark, she shares this insight. Darkness possesses its own essential grace. It's darkness that bears liminal imaginings more difficult to access in the scattered daylight. Darkness brings the restorative sleep and dreaming to our bodies and that our psyches require. Darkness takes the harried busyness of the day and transforms it to stillness, to quiet. Darkness erases our view of the horizon, forcing our reliance upon a spacious inner vision that daylight cannot provide. Like her previous observation that birth and life can only come from the dark, Haupt tells us that our imaginations can only envision the possibilities when we stop to be still and calm in the dark. Sleep and dreams, possibilities for the future are most rich when we can stop the sensory overload that light brings us. Haupt uses the words of Joan Halifax to describe these moments. I love this phrase, the fruitful darkness. The time in our days and lives that let us reflect, to germinate, to blossom with creativity of our imaginations, that we might see a way forward. There are blessings in the dark. Darkness feeds our beginnings and rests our souls for the work that needs to be done in our lives, in our churches, and in our world. The work of justice and liberation. When we challenge ourselves to move beyond the simple equation of dark equals bad, light equals good dichotomy, we can move deeper into the balance between darkness and light that this life requires of us. We begin to see the nuance of balance that shows we need both and all to create and nurture life. We can see the fireworks in the dark and celebrate together the fullness of the blessings that life has to offer us. This January 2022, I once again found it difficult to motivate myself for a walk. I found myself wanting to hibernate. And with the second anniversary of the pandemic looming during a second lockdown because of the Omicron variant, I found myself sliding towards the darkness of despair. And then I remembered these lessons. In darkness, we rest. In darkness, our imaginations give us possibilities not possible in light. In darkness, we find life in the soil of what was. In darkness, my community holds me. Instead of despair, I welcomed home the dark. I took refuge in it. I let my body sleep a bit more. I reprioritized my to-do list and gave myself a little bit more grace, a little bit more space to rest and take care of myself. Church communities across the nation have reached out to each other throughout the past 2 years, holding each other close, reaching for each other's hands in the dark. As we emerge, as we blossom into spring with the snowdrops coming up from the soil, my hope is that we continue to practice grace with one another. My hope is that we can remember these lessons that darkness has brought us as we learn to be in community in new ways. My hope is that as we do our justice work in the world, that we remember to cultivate moments of rest and renewal in the rich, dark soil of community. May we remember that the fruitful darkness is how we nourish our minds, bodies, and spirits so that we might imagine the possibility of justice and community. May we see the dark not as despair, but as rest and renewal, so tomorrow might bear forth life abundant. Amen.
I'm going to bring the choir up for our closing hymn. Let's have group 1 over on this side and group 2 over on this side. The choir is going to lead you in a round of hymn number 1072, Evening Breeze. The words are printed in your order of service and are written on your screen. We are going to sing, we will sing it all 3 times all the way through. The first time we will sing it together, and then we will split into the round, starting with this side and then finishing on this side. For those of you in the middle, it is up to you. You can take your pick.
The darkness calls, asking us to still our minds, open our hearts, and immerse our bodies in its gentle quiet. As we go forth from this place, may we commit to embrace the dark in the same way we welcome the light. May we celebrate the gifts of darkness, rest and renewal, connection and calm, that they might bring us back into balance with ourselves and the world. May it be so. Blessed be.